everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about Storm Warning by Elizabeth Goddard, and this is a romantic suspense novel, and it's Christian fiction, so it's a Christian romantic suspense, and it's also the first book in Elizabeth Goddard's brand new series called Hidden Bay, and it's set in the Pacific Northwest. Now, I read an advanced reader copy of this one, so many thanks to the publisher for sending me the advanced reader copy. I'll add my usual disclaimer that all the opinions that I express in this video are completely my own. Now, why did I want to read this one? Well, I've loved reading the books I've previously read by Elizabeth Goddard, and I have a couple of book recommendations on my blog, which you can find at my website, which is at narelleatkins.com, and the links will be in the show notes to the book recommendations. So let's talk about the book. Storm Warning by Elizabeth Goddard is set in the Pacific Northwest on the remote Washington coast. And this one has obviously suspense and romance tropes. It would be pretty close to 50-50 suspense romance. It could be 60-40 one way or the other, but it definitely is very strong on the suspense and the romance together. And the tropes that we have in this one, we have the amnesia trope. So one of our characters has no clue about things that happened in the past that are actually very important. We have a deadly storm that's heading in from the Pacific Ocean that's threatening where they're staying. We have ex-military main characters, which always adds a bit of extra oomph, I think, to romantic suspense because they have the skill set to get themselves out of some pretty tricky situations. And we also have one of our main characters is on the run and in hiding, and this is our character of amnesia, and she has no idea why she's hiding. So we have that fun trope as well that I call the hidden danger trope. So our first line with this one is from the prologue, and it's actually in a side character's point of view, and it is déjà vu, a premonition, call it whatever you want. So that's a pretty intriguing opening, and I'll go back to the prologue in a minute because we'll start talking about the characters and I'll backtrack. So Remy is our leading lady. She's 29 years old. She's ex-army and originally from Nebraska, so she's not native to Washington. She is in hiding at the Cedar Trails Lodge where she has a job managing it. So this lodge is just in the most gorgeous setting. It's on a cliff and it's got rocks, it's a very rocky beach, very rough terrain, and it's well known for being a storm watching place. So the lodge has these massive windows where you can sit there curled up with a nice coffee or hot chocolate or whatever you like to keep you warm, or some soup, and just watch the weather roll in. And at the beginning of the story, we have the storm of the decade is brewing in the Pacific Ocean and about to hit them at the lodge. So it's a very rustic place. It has cabins where guests can stay and get a lot of privacy. It also has no Wi-Fi, so you're pretty disconnected there. And in most places, there's no cell phone coverage, which means that the staff who work there use walkie-talkies. So in the prologue, we actually have one of the workers at the lodge, and she does maintenance work, and she's been called to a cabin because there's been a leaky sink or something has gone wrong with the plumbing. And when she turns up, things don't go according to plan, and something bad happens to her. And so I'm not going to say any more. And then we move into chapter 1 and we meet Remy. And she's madly running around outside because one of the guests has lost their little dog. So imagine a little dog that sits in a purse or a handbag, and this little dog has somehow got away and they just can't find it, and this massive storm is coming. So being the boss, she feels it's her responsibility to brave the storm and try and find this dog. And so she ends up down on the beach, and it's really terrifying. I mean, I've been to the Oregon coast in March, so it was pretty ordinary weather, but it wasn't a big storm. And those sneaker waves and the the swell is just massive. And I can just imagine further north that the sea would be wild, there'd be a king tide coming and all sorts of stuff going on. And so being on the beach is not ideal if there's a king tide coming that could actually overtake the beach. So what ends up happening is that Remy gets in a sticky situation and a stranger ends up saving her, and the dog is saved as well. So don't worry about the dog. The dog is okay and gets reunited with its owner. But the thing that really gets Remy going is that this place, this remote lodge in Hidden Bay, is meant to be a safe place for her. She has amnesia and she can't remember what happened for a few days a couple of years ago when she was in Eastern Europe. And she's also been receiving some mysterious puzzle pieces that have turned up that kind of suggests that they relate to something that happened in Eastern Europe that she can't remember. So she's pretty stressed out because she thought she was safe in this lodge and then things have been happening. And then what happens at the beach incident when she's saved by the stranger really unsettles her because she thinks there's a problem and that something bad could happen. So let's introduce you to Hawk. So he's our hero. He's also ex-army. He's a helicopter pilot and he's in his 30s. And he runs a business with helicopters. And he's actually at the lodge because he wants to meet Remy to put together a business proposal to have helicopter tours that fly in and out of the lodge for the guests that are staying there. But he's also in Hidden Bay for a different reason because he's looking for someone and he was given a tip that the person that he's looking for is in the Hidden Bay area. So that's why he happens to be there and happens to stumble upon Remy when she's in a tricky situation and needs help. So the romance meet cute is pretty awesome in the sense that it's a life and death situation. So they really do form a bond from that very intense first meeting. It was a dire situation, so there's no other way to phrase it. So in the story, there's quite a few issues that happen. We've got a whole lot of danger going on. We have trust issues. Both Remy and Hawk have been damaged by things that have happened in the past. So they have a lot of emotional baggage and a whole list of reasons as to why they don't trust people easily. And Remy just can't remember what she needs to remember. So she doesn't know who she can and who she can't trust. And so those scars from the past cause them a whole lot of problems. And Remy really wants to get her memories back, and she's been seeing a psychologist and doing all these things. And she's also at the same time scared because she has blocked out what happened for a reason. And so she's quite afraid that when she does remember what happens, that it's going to be pretty awful. And so the unknown danger and her memory being a problem, I mean, she's just in a state of utter chaos and confusion, and her safe haven is no longer a safe haven, and she really doesn't quite know what to do. So with the romance in the story, I really liked how the romance arc played out. So it is a full romance arc as well as a full suspense arc. And really, there's so much going on in this story. And you often find this with romantic suspense when the suspense is full on and intense, that the romance sort of simmers along and they're both in a place of this isn't the right time to be thinking about romance. And they really both have reasons to not be involved, yet they have that they're pulled together and drawn together because that attraction is there. And the intensity of the situations with the forced proximity really do push them together in a lot of ways and make them really think about whether or not something could happen at the end of all this when they're finally safe. So my favorite book quote from this one is that her need to see the world and expand her horizons, write a travel blog, had landed her in Hidden Bay. Hiding from the world was pure irony. So Remy isn't living the life she wants to live. Hawk also isn't living the life he wants to live. There's something happened with his previous employment that has made his life complicated. And The danger is really intense in this book, and I loved it. I just love it when you have those stories that have so much suspense and danger and all this stuff happening. And we really get to see how the characters act when they're under pressure and see what's going on in terms of their faith journey. And they're both really challenged to assess what they think about a whole lot of stuff. And so I'd call this one a story that has relevant faith elements because there are different times in the story when things are revealed and they realize that what they believe to be true isn't necessarily true. And then that also leads them to question their relationship with God and who God is and whether he cares about them and whether he's going to save them. And there's a whole lot of big questions that come up. And I really loved how the faith element was played out in the story. So, what did I love about this book? I love the high octane suspense. Like, I read this book within 24 hours. I did, I think I slept. I read it, went to sleep, woke up the next morning, and the first thing I did was pick up this book to keep reading because it was one of those stories that I can't put down. And I will be honest, I am like this with romantic suspense. And I will make sure that if I'm going to read a romantic suspense, that I have a chunk of time to basically binge the book because I know what I'm like. And when I really get hooked into the story, I just don't want to put it down. And Storm Warning was one of those books that I would have been very upset if I had have had to walk away and put it down for any length of time because it was so good and I had to know what happened next. So the twists and turns in the plot kept me guessing. The romance with the forced proximity and the amnesia and the trust issues that they both had were just fabulous. And it worked really well. And I really loved the way the romance played out in the story. Now, in terms of the impact on me, though, I love the heart racing action. So, this isn't the book to read if you don't want your blood pressure to go up because you will feel that adrenaline rush when you're in the characters' heads and you're feeling and experiencing the danger that they're in. I was also quite worried about the characters at different times because they were in some quite tricky situations that were life threatening and they really had to use their wits and skills and rely on a lot of resources and really dig deep to stay alive and to work out exactly what was going on with the danger that was around them. And I just couldn't put the book down. It was just fabulous. So, in summary, I would recommend Storm Warning to readers who like action packed suspense and romance combined. If you like a book where that starts out with danger and the stakes keep getting raised and keep getting raised, then you'll really like this book. If you like the twists and turns that you get in a really good suspense story with the romance added in, you'll love this one. If you like the amnesia trope, which I really do, I like it in romance, but I do like it in romantic suspense because it typically adds something from the backstory that's really cool. And there's a big secret that gets revealed to explain why the characters are in danger. And the story has a relevant faith element in it, and it looks at issues of trust and God's providence and his provision for the characters as well. So there's just so much to love about this book. Thanks for joining me today. Does Storm Warning sound like a book that you'd like to read? Have you read it? Please let me know. So, if you're listening on the podcast, you can send me a text via the link in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like the episode and leave a comment at YouTube. You can also email me at my website via my contact form at narelleatkins.com. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe at your favorite podcasting app or at YouTube, and then you won't miss an episode because you'll get a notification of my next weekly episode. Thanks again for tuning in and see you next time.